What's up guys, Smiles here with 9 to 5 Mac, and if you're a fan of good ideas, be sure to subscribe to the channel for future content like this. Today I finally got my iPad Air 5 and man, this is quite the interesting device because before this thing came out we were just expecting an A15 processor and a few new colors, but then Tim Apple came out and dropped the gauntlet on us. The iPad Air is now powered by the Apple M1 chip, and so today we're going to be finding out exactly how powerful this new iPad Air is with this supercharged processor inside. And then we'll be coming out with a full review where I essentially show you what you can actually do with the M1 chip inside of an iPad. When taking a look at the design of the Air 5, really not much has changed here at all. The tablet itself hasn't really gotten any thinner or lighter, and you've still got those thickish bezels going around the display with a singular camera module on the back. And this detail is kind of an aside, but I kind of find it odd that the iPad Air doesn't come with a flash while the iPad mini does. That's weird, right? I've never actually consciously thought about having a flash on an iPad either, but that is strange. And we definitely need to talk about these colors because I feel like Apple might as well not even have all these special colors. They show these colorful tablets on the website and it looks colorful in commercials. Heck, even the box art is colorful, but when you actually take the tablet out and look at it, you're like, wait, did I get the right color? In certain lighting conditions, you really have to look at the tablet to get a sense of the color. In case you couldn't tell, I've got the purple model here, and I bought it with the thought that it'd be really nice to film and it'd look great on camera. And yes, it does look okay on camera, but everyone I show this tablet to can't even tell that it's a purple color at first. And this is exactly what I felt about the Sky Blue Air 4 that I got in 2020. And what I find strange about this is that Apple doesn't necessarily do this with colorful models with their other products. Apple went with these truly bold colors with the 24-inch iMac, but the iPad Air always gets the most flat and subtle iteration of any color they put on it. None of this affects the way I feel about the tablet as a device, but aesthetically, I'm once again very underwhelmed. But like I said, this isn't a radical redesign by any means, but given the fact that it was redesigned less than a few years ago, it's probably not something that most people will be tripping on, like myself. Now, something that I am tripping on and something that pretty much came up in the middle of producing this video is an actual build quality flaw. This is something that was reported by a few sites, and I'm not sure how widespread the issue is, but it's definitely an issue for me and a friend of mine, Paul in Tech, who has a blue iPad Air 5. Essentially, if you gently feel on the back of the tablet without a case, you can feel like a click or creaking sound, and it feels like the aluminum housing is making contact with either the battery or another component inside. This is something I've never experienced with an iPad before, and certainly not something I've experienced with the Air 4. So from a build quality standpoint, this tablet is technically a downgrade, or at least my model that I've got is a downgrade from the iPad Air 4. Apple still hasn't made any public response to these build quality issues, but if the issue is widespread enough, I'd assume Apple would recall the Air 5 or just fix the issue for all of the models being produced going forward. But man, I gotta say, this is disappointing, especially for a company like Apple, who you'd expect to have an issue like this down pat. If this was a brand new device using parts internally that they've never used before, that'd be one thing, but this wasn't even a redesigned tablet, and it creaks whenever you hold it or press on it in a certain way. Personally, I'm gonna probably return this and hold off on buying another Air 5 until Apple gives us some sort of confirmation that the issue's been fixed. And you know how these things go with Apple. They're gonna try to position themselves to be as blameless as they can be for this issue. But like I said, I would probably hold off until Apple gives us some sort of confirmation that they're addressing it. Probably one of the biggest downsides of this new Air is the fact that it still comes with only 64 gigs of storage to start. And I honestly think that's unacceptable for the asking price. This is technically the mid-range iPad model out of the lineup, so having that higher storage capacity should be a necessity. No one's asking for like 500 gigs to start, just a mere 128 would be nice, Apple. People like myself are using the iPad to store a lot of media, and 64 gigs just isn't cutting it anymore. When it comes to the camera setup, nothing really has changed on the rear-facing camera. You've still got a single lens with 4K video recording up to 60 FPS. Obviously nothing crazy, but if you want to be like the aunties at the birthday party recording everything with an iPad, the Air 5 will allow you to do that. But the real upgrades come with the front-facing camera. You've now got the 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens with the 122 degree field of view, so that means means you've now got the center stage functionality that's on every other iPad model other than the standard iPad at this point. And just like on the Mini and the Pro, it's one of my favorite features of the camera in general. Just having that wide of an angle in general is just so much fun to play with, but that's essentially it as far as upgrades in the camera department. The speakers on the Air 5 didn't get the crazy quad speaker stereo setup that we hoped for based on leaks, but they still definitely sound solid for what you're paying. It's got a very punchy sound for being in this small of a chassis. Take a listen.
Baby, I'm just wired different. So to start off, but I'm in from day one. I don't know a lot, but I know about us. I don't know a lot, but I know I love you. We're gonna die young. So to dive in.
Instead of getting Thunderbolt like the iPad Pro, the Air 5 gets an upgraded Type-C port. The previous model had USB 3.1 Gen 1, but the Air 5 gets Gen 2, which supports 10 gigabits per second speeds, which is definitely a nice addition, and hopefully speeds up things like importing large files from external devices. The iPad Air is a lot more powerful than the previous model due to the upgraded M1 chip. When taking a look at Geekbench scores, the iPad is obviously scoring crazy high compared to the iPad Air 4, especially for multi-core, well above devices like the 2020 iMac, the 2013 Mac Pro, the 2018 Mac Mini, and it's a thin, light, fanless tablet. That in and of itself is crazy to think about, but what can you exactly do with that power? Well, let's find out. We're gonna take some high quality footage from my Canon R5 and play with it within Lumafusion. And now we are going to go into Lumafusion and firstly import some footage just to get an idea of how much faster it is to import footage to this tablet compared to the iPad Air 4, because when using Lumafusion on that tablet, that was the biggest thing that really got on my nerves, was not knowing how long it was going to take for footage to transfer, especially because the app doesn't give you any sort of progress for how much the files have been imported. So we're going to see how much faster this is in real time. So we're going to go here to import media, go to the Files app, and let's find some video clips to use. We're gonna select 1, 2, 3, and open. And let's see how long this takes to transfer over. So far, not a whole lot faster, and we really only selected less than 5 gigabytes worth of files, so not a crazy large file in terms of the actual size. So hopefully this gets transferred in pretty soon. Okay, so that was probably a little faster than the iPad Air would have been, but not a huge difference given the fact that we've got double the speeds for transferring data. But now we've got our files in here and we're gonna drag them onto a pre-existing timeline with some other footage that I've got, also shot on my Canon R5. And let's first look at these two stacked files on top of each other playing. These are two 4K 120 FPS clips playing simultaneously. Let's go ahead and hit play here. And it's pretty freaking smooth. Obviously, it's kind of hard to tell how smooth it is because it is slow-mo, but I can definitely tell because I shot the footage. There's pretty much zero lag here, zero stutter, and that is quite impressive for this being a $600 tablet that makes absolutely no noise. I can edit footage, very high quality footage like this in a breeze. And yeah, just scrolling through footage here is super smooth. I've got absolutely no complaints with how this looks. And yeah, once again, pretty much no stutter here. And this is 4K HQ footage, so it's downsampled from an 8K frame and put into a 4K file, and the footage is playing back perfectly here. So we're gonna go ahead and export what's basically a 3-minute movie file comprised of all these 4K 120 frames per second and 4K 24 frame per second clips, and export it to a movie file. Gonna go ahead and export it to the Photos app. Pretty much all of our settings are maxed out here, and let's go. See how long this takes. So it completed the export in less than 2 minutes. So this tablet completed this export of very high quality footage faster than real time. And there's a lot of really practical applications for this where having this kind of speed is going to be really helpful for productivity. And while the iPad Air 4 was no slouch, this is even more impressive for stuff like this. And TuneTune Benchmark is obviously a very popular benchmarking application, and I want to run it here on the M1 iPad Air just to get an idea of how capable the M1 chip is inside of this package. And when running the benchmark here, looking at it in real time, you can definitely see that there's slight stutters throughout a lot of these heavy 3D graphic benchmarks, but overall it's pretty smooth, I gotta say. So we got a score of 1,066,230. Obviously very impressive for a freaking tablet like this, and outperforming pretty much every other Android tablet out there in the market at this point. So I think it's safe to say if you want the most pure raw power out of a tablet right now, something like the M1 iPad Pro or the iPad Air 5 is something you'd want to consider. And then to round this out, I want to play some Samurai Jack, which is probably one of my favorite games, to get an idea of how good a device is for things like gaming and just general gaming performance. I remember I first tried this game out on the iPhone 12 Pro, and even with that phone's powerful processor, I noticed some lag when getting into more intensive things like fighting a bunch of enemies at once. Things like that, or running around in circles, things like that would slow me down. But really, I'm not noticing any lag here at all, and don't pay attention to how I'm not actually good at the game, because quite honestly, it's hard for anyone to make a video while playing a game and be good at doing both, especially as someone who isn't a gamer like myself. But in general, performance here is great. I'm seeing no lag, generally speaking. Looks like I'm getting the full 60 frames per second as intended, and that's definitely something you want for a tablet like this, especially for the asking price. If you're going to throw an M1 chip in here and not have stellar performance for things like gaming, then there's pretty much no point of doing it, and so I'm glad we're getting the expected performance out of this tablet. So obviously there's improvements in performance across the board for productivity apps, but it's pretty marginal for the most part, and I think one of the reasons it doesn't feel as fast is because this tablet lacks an 120Hz display. And I don't necessarily think that the mid-range iPad needs to have ProMotion, but maybe Apple could introduce a ProMotion Lite where we get 90Hz, so the iPad Air doesn't have all the same iPad Pro features. I think that'd be a great middle ground, because this alone makes for a night and day difference compared to the iPad Pro. And the more 120Hz panels Apple puts in their devices, the more and more 60Hz starts to feel like 30Hz. The iPad Air 5 isn't a bad tablet, but with it sitting right under the iPad Pro, which offers a lot more features for the price, I'm not really convinced that this tablet is better value than something like a refurbished iPad Pro. And when you combine that with the current build quality issues, the Air 5 is honestly a tough sell for me at this point. But when it inevitably goes on sale for a little less, then that might be a move for me. But hopefully Apple fixes the build quality issues and hopefully works on making iPadOS more useful for this processor. The title of this video was why the iPad Air doesn't make sense, and what doesn't make sense is the fact that you cannot redesign the tablet and come out of the gate with build quality issues. What doesn't make sense is that you've got a much more powerful processor inside, but still feels just as fast because of that 60Hz display. Things like that just don't make sense. We're gonna have some iPad Air comparisons coming up, so if you're ready for that, be sure to subscribe to the channel for future content like this, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.